The swing plane and releasing the golf club, how do they work together? Let's get into it. Release pattern and swing plane go hand in hand. They will affect each other. Today, I've got my usual boxes up. Attack angle, club path, face the path, and I've got a new one up. I've got swing plane. Now, for those of you that have used TrackMan, and those coaches out there, hopefully you all appreciate and you will be aware that the swing plane is set on TrackMan by the center of the club face, not the club shaft, the center of the club face, and how it tracks before, after, and at strike, but heavily set more so by before strike. Therefore, I could have a golf club head arcing from inside straight to inside. That could have a club shaft very, very low. And I could have a club shaft very, very high. So you can't use, for TrackMan, you can't use the swing plane ingredient to set how your handle and head absolutely work. Because the swing plane, let's say at 45 degrees for a 7-iron, tour average for a driver is about 48. Let's say we have the handle super low, and I hit a golf shot with the handle super low, and you can see that on the screen, yet the swing plane value is 75 degrees. That's suggesting that my handle is really very vertical. If I now have a handle that's high and a club head swinging into in, I might not get that. Let me do that again. So the shaft was more vertical, value of 48 degrees. So you can't set the swing plane to give you a readout on the shaft. I just wanted to throw that out there just to start you off with. Now, the pitch of the shaft is crucial. It's something that we all relate to when it comes to early extension. The more we tend to see a shaft pitch more parallel to the floor, let's say, the more we would want to see and would end up seeing is more side bend, and we would tend to see more posture through strike. When we think about what the handle has to do to facilitate more bend over, to create a plane of swing that's more laid down, the handle track and the head in how they react with each other at strike and beyond strike will feel very, very different. So when we've had golfers unloading the toe of the golf club over the heel of the golf club, or whether we've had a golfer unloading the club head past the handle with loft or no loft, the no loft version is the flip, as it's known as, where we unload the golf club and we create loft. That's more than what we class under release. So those are the two most popular release patterns, and how they go hand in hand with the swing plane is crucial for you to understand. So when we are fighting a bend in the sky, if the ball is bending to the right, fundamentally your club face is open to your path line. And at that point, it creates a reaction. And the reaction it creates is either a widening of the arc on the way down, or a flipping over of the toe. And when we're trying to flip the toe over, what's happening is that because this right arm and this right shoulder are trying to make the club close the face down, it's trying to make the head weight go to the left. And that's where the golfer then tries to swing from the inside to offset that. Now, what that does to the balancing act of the shaft in its plane is that it makes it more vertical, because the gap that we started with from the handle and the head was set by our posture. Now what you're trying to do is make the face look left, and you're doing that by using the right shoulder and the right arm over the top as we know it. And what that's doing is it's making the club head try to push itself to the left. And in pushing the head to the left, it's catapulting the handle out to the right, which is why we then foreshorten the distance from where we started to impact, which is why swing planes get stood up. And when the swing plane gets stood up, you must understand that if the handle is going to the ball, the club head has to be going to the left. But you've inspired that by trying to close the club face, widening the arc, getting the club head more over here of the ball line to get the face pointing left. And of course, in doing so, you've dragged the handle out to the ball line, and then you're trying to unload the golf club. So now you've got an orientation, obviously in an extreme, that the shaft is stood up and the loft is trying to look back at me. So that the club is getting unloaded and trying to point left. You can see that the head has gone left and the handle has gone right. Now, if you're a golfer that's tried to encourage inside out, even though you've got the handle traveling inside out and you've got the face a bit open, if you have managed to get the face back straight, look at the orientation of where the handle has arrived and the head has arrived relative to the start point. So you are always, when you push the handle out to the right, going to end up with a swing plane that stands up more, which pulls you out of posture, which creates more hip extension. But you've created that by trying to push the handle to the right. So by then changing this awareness of where the handle must be, the handle being more down, which immediately starts to point the loft more left, of course. That's number one. But that's really, it does matter, but it's such a small ingredient. Big ingredient when it comes to bunker shots and lob shots and all that kind of thing. But it's such a small ingredient in this topic, shall we say. The more that we now start to understand that when we create pressure and force on the handle, which I ram on about all of the time, the more I have the opportunity of making this golf club do the opposite to what it's used to doing. So when the club has the opportunity to lever back up this way, which is only a wrist set up and not a wrist set down, on a radial, but I'm not going to use those words, but a wrist set up or a wrist set down. When you have a wrist set that's coming back up because the pressure in the handle is working down, you now have the opportunity to start to feel like the handle can move down and the club can start to unload back up, which is a very, very odd feeling when you've been a guy or girl that's unloaded the golf club down and in. So this is swing plane and this is club release and how the two go together. So as we start to now understand, and I'm going to show you in a moment how to apply all of this and change this, but if I don't give you the overview and the detail, and a lot of people have said on my channel, get to the point, Stuart. Well, if you want quick fire messages, head over to TikTok and Instagram where all the junk is. But here, explanation, learning to give you a real value in this content and a lifelong's worth of good golf. And if you're enjoying this, do feel free to subscribe while you're here. So understanding that this pressure down this side now actually feels like the golf club can actually prop itself back up. Now look at how far away from the ball to target line that handle is. Look at how far away from the ball to target line that handle is at that point. But look how close that head is in relation to the ball line. So I've actually applied force down here and the club head's actually started to work back up, hasn't it? Now if I do the opposite, if you are an inside out merchant with the handle and now that club head is to the left and now turned down, look at the gap between the ball line and the handle line. How could you not possibly come back with some form of vertical swing plane? So when you think about Ben Hogan's pane of glass, he was talking about that angle pitch, but the pane of glass, the handle needed to run back up that pane of glass on the other side of the swing. And to do that, that's very, very strange. So that when you now start to think about what this club head will feel like with a good plane and the implications of what that will make you feel. So when I set up to the golf ball, the more I start to feel like the handle has got pressure on it. That club head from down the ball line, you can see that club head is inside. But compared to a golfer that's felt like he's trying to push the handle inside out, that club head feels like it's miles outside the ball line. But obviously the handle now underneath us has now pulled us more in posture. And then when I move the handle back inside, can you see that club head is come back inside that ball to target line, but only a small amount. Very different to the golfer that's tried to swing the handle out to the right and close the face down. So as we start to understand that this pressure in the handle that makes the club head wider here, straighter, wider here, now actually creates a much more vertical descent angle as a feeling because of where the handle is and the swing plane that it's creating, which is why when TrackMan says that my swing plane is 65 degrees, it would immediately make you think that my handle is stood up, but it's not at all. Because actually, the more my handle stands up, the more it pulls the club head in. Then when I unload the golf club, the club head then swings back in. What TrackMan would then say is that you've got a very low level swing plane, and it's not the truth. Because the handle has not been read, it's simply read that the head has moved into in. So what we're looking for is a few ideas of how to feel this. If you're tired of paying too much for premium leather golf gloves, do head over to gxgolfgloves.com These gloves are trusted by tour players and elite amateurs. Use my code GOODCOACHING for 10% off your next order. Go check them out. So first up, I want you to get yourself a box, and if you've watched my video on having these wall of boxes in front of you, you'll still have those left over. But what this allows us to start to do, and if you get yourself a couple of golf balls that are running parallel, now immediately you might think, okay, well I don't want to swing the club in a straight line. Well, of course, this box, the edge of this box, is giving me the arc in which the club can swing on. So can you see that that club's arcing inside to inside? And the reason why it's arcing inside to inside is because that club is hinging on the angle the shaft's at. If the shaft was vertical and it was swinging on that line, can you see how all of a sudden the club is much, much straighter? The more horizontal that shaft is and it's pitching on that, the more it's arced. So when I set myself up, what I'm now looking for is a feeling that as I move the handle to the left, what I'm going to try to do is close off this gap here. Can you see as I close that gap off, look how that club head stays more on that ball to target line. If I now lift my club head up, look how the handle up rather, look how the club head comes back in. And if you're pushing the handle out to the right, the club head's going to come back in, which is why you will then start to stand the shaft up and pull yourself out of posture. So what I would like you to do is to try to close the gap off on the way back, because as you close the gap off on the way back, you can see the handle still works in, which gets the club head propped up, not low and inside. We put the pressure down on the box, which allows us to get the club head out. Then we go up to the top, and then what you're going to do is you're going to try and get the handle back underneath you. Look how the club head is back out on the ball to target line. Now you're going to run it down the box, move the handle back inside. And all of a sudden you've got, depending on whether your handle lifts up or whether your handle is down, it will depict whether your arc is wider in its circumference or more narrow in its circumference. And so the box then gives you something tangible to start to feel what the handle should feel like here and what the handle should feel like here. It should feel like the handle's moved in and down. And when you press it down, what you'll feel is you'll feel your right shoulder trying to move around and you'll feel your left hip trying to go back. And at that point, the club head will be more out in front of you. And then you'll start to see the loft of the golf club point more up. So this box really gives you a sense of how you can start to apply the pressure in the handle and change that angle of club head in delivery. But as I say, swing plane on TrackMan is not measuring the shaft. It is measuring the center of the club face. That is it. So don't use that reading as telling you whether you've got the shaft angle correct or not. So this box drill will really give you a great idea of where you need to orientate the handle. Then when we get the magic broom back out, all of a sudden we start to feel that when the golf club is working back and through here, now all of a sudden we will start to feel any handle lift that starts to make the broom bottom out to the left and start to point the face more to the left. So the more I'm applying pressure down, look how the head is more out on the ball line. The more I push the handle out to the right, which would be up and off of the box, you can see that the face starts to point more left, the handle pushes more out to the right, and the face turns back in. But you've created that situation when you've moved the handle inside out. So the broom, yet again, if you haven't seen my broom video, do go check that out. I've done 4 of them. You'll really sense that through this spot here, the weight of the broom is propped up by the shoulder and the lower half. So, in essence, release of the golf club and swing plane go hand in hand with each other. Do let me know if you have any questions on that. That is a big and deep a bit of content there. So do go back and watch a lot of my other videos if you are new to the channel. This is not a quick tip channel. This is about understanding the game for what it truly is and understanding the lever system that we have to sense and understand to allow our body to behave in the way we would like it to behave powerfully, to create good angles of attack, good path line, good face control, flighted spun shots that are going to lower your handicap. I think you'll find that's good coaching.